Welcome back to another episode of In Depth. My name is Luke Hardacre, and I'm a surf coach at Ombi. If you're new to Ombi, we take a look at surfing from the perspective of ocean, mind, body, and equipment. And this podcast, it's all about straight to the point tips, things that you can take away, implement into your surfing, or things that change the way you view your surfing. This week, I'm following on from last week's episode. And at the end, we talked about this moment. So I want to ask you this question. Do you ever just surf a wave and think, what the actual F did I just do there? Why am I so stupid? I completely stuffed that up. Or it can go the other way and you just click and enter this state of flow and you pull out thinking, what the actual F? That was amazing. Both of these situations. So this can also go from wave to wave, where one wave you're on fire, the next you can't even find your feet. There's a hell of a lot going on here, and it all ties back to the 3 Fs: freeze, flight, or fight. This is not something new. It's not related to surfing at all. It's a basic survival mechanism, and it's inbuilt to all of us. And it's something that goes unnoticed within us in every surf. It's something that if you don't control it, it's going to control you. The line you take on a wave, how you move, if you even bother to paddle over and sit near the peak or not, this will control you. It's a response to the stimulus and the environment you're in. It's the conditions, the other surfers, your stress, anxiety, fears, and everything else going on inside your head. There's another previous podcast episode you can go back to. You can have a listen to Managing Fear and Bigger Surf if you want to. You can find that below. But I want to stick typically just about understanding the 3 Fs and how this is going to impact your surfing and how you can use this understanding to work between them and where you want to be. So what are the 3 Fs? So wherever your mind is dealing with a stressful situation, one of these three things is going to happen. You'll either freeze and lock up, you'll run from the stress, or you'll stand and face it. If you're in freeze or flight mode, you practically have no chance of what you're doing. Until you get out of that position, you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. So what does this look like in your surfing? And how does it impact your surfing? Freeze mode is really simple. It's one I think most people can see in their mind's eye before we really dive into this. But it's seen the most in beginners and intermediates. When the wave steps up, this is typically what you see when a surfer will get to their feet and they completely freeze. No movement, just lock up and they're holding on for dear life. This can also be seen when people refuse to paddle for waves and start finding excuses as to why they refuse to move. There's many different ways you can see freeze mode in surfing. Flight is the most common one we see. It's every intermediate surfer racing down the line to the shoulder, looking for safety, and then thinking, okay, now that it's safe, where can I do a turn? It's a classic trap, considering where you wanted to turn, you just raced away from. And whether you know it or not, feel the stress or are looking for safety, this is what's happening in that moment. This is again the same thing when the waves step up and people paddle to the horizon for safety. When they paddle or sit wide of the peak and try and paddle in from the shoulder. It's kind of this yo-yoing effect. Coming in, coming out, they're running. All of this is dodging danger, trying to avoid it and find a safe way to get to it or get away. At this point, it's hard to do anything until that stress calms down. And then finally, we have fight mode. This is what you'd consider freedom. Not so much the typical fight mode where we stand up and fight the threat. You're now able to respond to it. It's where you're just in the moment. and you can do what the wave wants to tell you it wants to do. Your surfing looks fun, or you're having a lot of fun because you'll be doing what you want to do. This is the state you want to find wherever you can, and you need to control the responses to all of these threats. If you're stuck in freeze or flight, it is really hard to work on your surfing. And you're going to have to find ways to relax and get yourself into a fight state. There's so many different ways. I'm going to explain this through most of the rest of this podcast and how you can go through these different stages and how this impacts you all within one surf. So I want to talk about a personal experience I had when Clay and I were going through this topic and trying to create one of the videos for the Omni method that's now out, completely free. You can do it via our community app. The link is in the show notes. So Clay and I had this surf. It was a couple months back. We'd gotten well into the afternoon and thought, there's no surf. We were calling it a day at the end of work, and we just checked the cams on a whim, and surprisingly it looked fun. So we set out. And there's a point to this background, and it's that we had no expectations of the surf. We had no ego, and we were just like, cool, let's go and do something. Just get out of the house. Anything will be a win. This is also a podcast about that whole topic. That's the point of the background. But we were jumping off the rocks at Currumbin Alley. It's probably head high. Clay went first, and I followed a minute later. As I was paddling out, I saw him starting to get swept down with the current and thought, stuff him. I'm gunning for the inside, and I'm going to get first crack at a wave. This first wave was a screamer. Clay saw it and started paddling for it, and I just went, nope, this is not happening. If he wants it, I want it more now. So being on the inside, I had right away. And I just looked at him, stuck my tongue out, and made a ton of noise to psych myself up. I had not a single expectation, just more stoked to sneak a good wave off Clay. I took off, got barreled, came out, kicked out the back into the lineup, and paddled back up to the point to rinse and repeat. I was stoked, no stress, didn't have to work for it, just kept myself in the pocket, let it break over me, held my line, picked an exit, and stayed relaxed. This is perfect fight mode, allowing me to respond to the scenario with ease. Enter flight mode. The second and third waves did not go well. Now built up with expectations, realizing that the waves are actually pumping, I was now forcing everything. The next wave, all I wanted to do was get barreled again. That I thought, go, go, go. Don't get caught and enter, and I entered flight mode. I raced ahead of the wave and let my leggy get barreled. That's not fun. The third wave was no better. I paddled back up the point in a big sweep with now a bad feeling, thinking, what the heck was I thinking? Why the hell did I do any of that on those waves? Freeze mode is even worse. I reset myself and I dropped my expectations. I went, okay, I just need to relax, let the wave tell me what to do. The following wave, it was not so ideal. I squeezed into it and forced the barrel. As I was just setting my line, I saw that it was going to chandelier. I instantly froze, completely stopped, closed my eyes, and gave up. A big no-no in any barrel situation. At this moment, I felt the chandelier hit me, and I expected to be completely thrown off. But I stayed on my feet and was brought back to this reality and went, right, what the hell happened? Exit this thing. And I started entering flight mode. The point of this story is that within 30 minutes of surfing, I'd gone through each of the 3 stages. And it was due to my expectations and trying too hard or giving up. It's not just a case of skill level or these things always happening. We can self-manifest these things and we will always struggle to control them. What's important is how we manage that and how we use that to our ability. A less obvious way to explain this concept is also during turns. Now you might think, well, hang on, if I'm doing a turn, I'm doing something. But if you stop to look at the spray, are you in fight mode? Are you responding to the scenario? Or are you stopping and locking up? Are you responding to certain stimulus and either running from it or just stopping movement? So in a lot of these cases, you're either running from a fear where you don't want to miss the wave, or you're completely locking up all movement because you're responding to the stimulus of your spray, going, I want to look at this thing, I'm now in freeze mode, and my body has stopped. I would personally love to have these kind of tips and tricks that you can use to get out of freeze, fight, and flight. Now, the common situation between all of it is stress, fear, anxiety. So it's being relaxed. But it's so nuanced that this can be across so many different situations that it's hard to give one takeaway to solve all of them. And everyone's different, and everyone's going to have a different response to different stimulus. So it all comes down to, when this happens to you, take that moment to stop and go, what the actual F just happened? Which of the 3 Fs was I just in? How did I respond? Was that good? Was it bad? How can I change that? Is this being caused by stress, anxiety, fear, whatever it is? And then you start self-identifying that this stimulus is causing this action. How do I get out of that? How do I push myself to fight mode? For a lot of people, fight mode is going to come with training and time, expanding your comfort zone into these new horizons, new ways to deal with different things. But then there are also techniques where you can just eject your brain, which at the start of this episode where I said I stick my tongue out and make an obscene noise, I've mentioned this one before. This is a very quick way to just get my brain to stop thinking and just act. The other side of the 3 Fs is this is going to very much impact the line you take on a wave. So if you're a beginner, if you're in freeze mode, if you're an advanced person in freeze mode, it really doesn't matter. You're typically going to go straight. If you're in flight mode, you're typically going to race across the face looking for safety. You're taking a very horizontal line, whereas the person who's frozen isn't really taking a line. They're generally going straight to the beach, and that's about it. When you're in fight mode, this is your typical advanced surfer using the whole wave's face. They're going top to bottom. This is what you want. This is how it impacts the line you take on the wave. So understanding that if you're in flight mode and you're wanting to improve your cutbacks, vertical snaps, cross-stepping, whatever it is, if you're running from the pocket, you're always going to struggle with that. And the line you take to do that maneuver is always going to struggle. So you need to address these things, that sometimes the symptom is actually, the problem you're facing is a symptom of a root cause, that something else is causing it, that it's the fear, the stress, the anxiety. And dealing with that, the stimulus that gives you your version of the 3 Fs can help you with what you're working on. So when you're starting to break it down, look at your surfing and how you respond to situations. You can see the connections between the 3 Fs. It's then a case of, how do I relax? How do I properly respond to this situation and take control again? Most cases, it's going to come down to, how can I get out of my head and just respond to the information in front of me? If you'd like to know more about Ombi, you can go straight down to the show notes of this episode or wherever you're finding this podcast. You'll find links to the Ombi method. This is a free training program. It goes through topics such as this, the 3 Fs, and so much more. It explains a lot about where you are in your surfing and understanding how you can go through this process of improving your surfing while also giving you some training to do. It's completely free. It was also connected to our free community app. So if you'd like to meet other surfers, do training, have catch-ups, all of that, that's all housed within the one platform. We also then have our following guides, our YouTubes. There's so much more. All of it's in the show notes. And if you've been really enjoying these podcasts, it'd mean a lot to leave a review. If you've got a friend that you'd like to share them to, same thing. Otherwise, next week, I'm going to be following up this episode with breaking down the Ombi lens. Now, this is taking a view of anything you do in your surfing, whatever it is, and viewing it through ocean, mind, body, and equipment, and trying to understand where the problem is. Using this system to understand what you're doing right or wrong. So until then, I'll see you next time.